Hey friends! Today I'm doing a collab with Asher, who uses he, him pronouns, and my name's River. I use he, him pronouns too, and we're talking about Trans Day of Remembrance. If you haven't heard of that before, it's on November 20th of every year, and it's a day specially designated to people who have died throughout that year due to specific hate crimes towards trans people. So we just wanted to have a conversation about it and talk about things that we've experienced and about the community in general and why being trans can lead to these types of hate crimes.
Basically, to break it down, once a year on November 20th usually, or a day around there, we have a day to memorialize all the trans people who died because of hate crimes. It is today, today when you're seeing this, it's a couple days prior for us. And it's a day where you should think about what's happening, try to do your part in stopping it, and give these people respect who died for their gender identity.
I think we were both talking about before that we want to make sure to mention that it's the deadliest year recorded.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the deadliest year there's ever been.
Yeah, 1970 might have been slightly worse.
Yeah.
It's likely.
But the thing about Trans Day of Remembrance is that it only takes into account the people who have died, and the families both are willing to say that they're out publicly, and the police and law enforcement have to also record it as a hate crime specifically about trans people. So oftentimes there's a lot of factors in that where you'll hear about hate crimes and they won't necessarily lead to a death, or you'll hear about hate crimes and the person will be publicized, misgendered, or something like that. Like we were just talking about someone that you saw that was very openly misgendered in Texas, and that was like not that long ago. So you could imagine like plenty of years ago it's way worse.
Yeah, just recently, there was a trans woman in Texas who, when they broadcasted her death, they used the wrong pronouns and they dead named her, I believe, and that's just such a horrible thing to do because she lived being out and being proud, even though obviously there were risks to her life and people didn't respect her even after she passed away. And that's horrible because you don't really have a voice for yourself at that point. So I guess this is a time where we can kind of give trans people who have been discriminated against or have actually been killed because of hate crimes a chance to use that voice.
The worst part about Trans Day of Remembrance for me is seeing all of the people listed, and you can look at the links down below. We're going to leave resources about this. All of the people listed where their names just say unknown because they never fully had a chance to go through that process and feel like who they really are. And as someone who's been through that, that's probably like the worst case scenario, is dying before I was ever able to be my true self. And I think that's something that is important to reflect on because not everyone gets that chance, and it's part of the whole reason why this day is important.
A lot of times they would be like disputed whether the person was trans or what their actual identity was, because like there are so many genders. Like if someone wasn't completely out about it, it's hard for anyone to guess. So that's the issue too, is that you might be out to close friends, but not enough that like you could still obviously get discriminated or have hate crimes against you, but to the point where like your gender identity can still be disputed and people can disregard it being a hate crime because you were not completely out.
I think that leads us into something else we wanted to talk about, which is just the dangers of coming out itself, because a lot of people think that coming out just has to do with like, oh, you don't want to be misgendered, or someone doesn't want, like you don't want someone to use the wrong name when they're referring to you, which is true, and that is part of it. But at the same time, it's dangerous to come out, and I've talked to people even recently, even in art school, even people who were part of the LGBTQ community that don't understand that, and they don't know that it's deadly. And it's something that needs to be talked about because trans people don't go and seek this out. They're just trying to live authentically. And that's just the thing, and that's why it's so horrifying, because I think it kind of relates to a lot of different issues we have right now about discrimination, where people are born a certain way and they are discriminated against. And it's the same thing with trans people, but they don't necessarily know because it's not within our society to be trained to where like, oh, you can be whatever gender you feel like inside, when you're born. It's just like we're pushed into something and then you feel trapped your whole life until you basically figure it out, and there's people who don't get to figure it out because either it's not safe for them to figure out even with themselves, or it's just not safe within their community, or they've never been exposed to that because of it.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's necessarily less or more unsafe for a trans person to come out, but it kind of is. I mean, in today's society, we're more aware of sexuality-based hate crimes, and we're more against those. We've had more news. We've already been through a bit of American history recently where we dealt with a lot of hate crimes, like down in Laramie and stuff, and just seeing that, and we're slowly moving past that, but it hasn't happened with trans people yet, because we can't even accept trans people as people yet. So we're not even thinking of this as a hate crime, because a lot of people don't even think trans people exist, especially the non-binary individuals or trans people of color.
Exactly. And that's the thing, like if you look at this list, it is all like a majority trans women of color, because either they're forced into prostitution and that's the only way they can live, or that like even police have done things like that, because it's a stereotype where people only recognize that as some other than a real person.
Yeah. They're discriminated because they're a woman, they're discriminated because they're a person of color, and they're discriminated because they're trans. So basically, everyone is against them, which is horrible.
And like even news media outlets and people in the governmental administration are painting lies about people that they've probably never met a trans person before, and that's dangerous. And this is where it's like more than just what people are saying, because it becomes a mindset that people have where they can excuse improper behavior. And that's kind of like, it's a collective thing too, because the more people that start to say those things, the more people think that that's an acceptable behavior.
Yeah, this definitely governmental administration right now brought out like a wave of people who felt like, oh, my horrible opinions that I thought I couldn't share, I can now share because literally some people in the government agree with you. And this is the year that like the bathroom bill was proposed, and we have people who discriminate against trans people or blame trans people for rape, which clearly rape is the issue, not trans people using their correct bathrooms. In just the first like couple months, I think it was the first 4 months of 2017, 7 trans women, especially most of them being trans women of color, were already murdered, which shows a lot about how this year has started off on a very different political climate. It's one of the highest rates of hate crimes against trans people since 2012, I believe.
Yeah, because they have an excuse for it, so they think that like they can get away with these things, and for the most part, people do at this moment, which is why it's dangerous to come out. And it's not just about pronouns or your name, it's personal safety.
A lot of people know they're trans before they come out. A lot of people, I think majority. I knew for a couple months, and it isn't just people know for days or they know for months. They can know for years and they can know for decades. And that's just kind of reality, because you need to consider the aspects of your life. And there are some people who don't feel safe to come out, and that's just how it is. And I feel like people judge them for that. But if you were in their situation, I'm sure you wouldn't come out too, because if your life is literally at risk, that's a bit of a bigger concern than your pronouns. And I know that hurts, because getting your pronouns wrong is horrible, like absolutely horrible, but you need to worry about your safety, and even if that means you can't express yourself the way you want, your first priority is being safe.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely led me to like just assume that like, okay, I'll let this person misgender me so that I don't like put myself in a horrifying situation at this moment. But that's kind of a terrible decision to make, because like at the same time people don't let their like cat be misgendered.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird, you'll see like someone on the street and you'll be like, aw, what a cute little dog you have, he's a good boy. And they'll be like, no, it's a she, and you instantly correct your pronouns because it's an animal. But when it's a person, God forbid, it could be wrong. Oh, I swear to God, because I've been on T for a couple months now, and the first thing that people do now is if I'm ever passing, I usually pass as androgynous. And so the first thing they do is they go straight, their eyes just go straight to my boobs to be like, what gender are you? And it's like, you could just ask, Or I'm like wearing trans ephemera all the time, so you could just assume.
I hate that so much.
Exactly, because bodies do not equal pronouns.
No. Yeah, well, and I've talked about it in a video before, but I had an experience at school where an administrator was like calling me an it because I told him that I was trans because I was trying to be more open to people. And that was like, ugh. Yeah, but then he was also like studying me up and down too because that's what people do and that's what people associate with it.
Yeah, I had a lot of it's a lot because it's just sometimes I don't even understand it. I'm like, are you looking for a gender neutral pronoun? Because A, you don't want to use my pronouns, or B, there is a gender neutral pronoun.
Yeah, I feel like people just know to, like, they associate trans people as, like, inhuman, whether they realize it or not.
Yeah, there's a subhuman thing, and you're literally calling someone an it that's like, you are candle, you are object, you are not human. It's like you don't even realize what you're saying.
Yeah. But, I mean, don't you, that's, like, what I would think of also. Like, when that happened to me in that moment, I just went along with everything he was saying because I didn't want to die.
Yeah, you're scared.
Yeah. And you know that that is dangerous, and, like, even if you, like, as being someone who was assigned female at birth, I already know what it's like to be sexually harassed and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what usually comes for trans people just for being trans. So
yeah, I think that, like, there are situations where I'm genuinely scared to stand up for myself, and that's horrible. And I think I know I have a gut feeling that's usually my gut is pretty correct on those kind of issues, and I'm like, I'm not gonna get into this because if, you know, I have friends who use my pronouns, I have friends who care about me, and I can just go to them and complain about this person rather than getting myself physically or emotionally hurt by this individual.
that's the thing about T-Door, it's all about physical assault, but people obviously, like, if they can't even recognize that, they're not going to recognize emotional and mental assault because a lot of this is, like, very damaging. And I've had to explain to people, like, I explained to my college that why it was, like, not safe for people to use the wrong pronouns, not only physically because someone could, like, figure out, like, oh, that person's trans because you're switching pronouns back and forth, but also, like, it makes everyone copy it, and then that's going to later cause me to have issues like, what am I doing wrong? I'm not, like, questioning these people, like, what's wrong with them. It's like, wow, I feel terrible as a human being.
Like, especially with educators, I'm like, you are an educator, and you are teaching other children that it is okay to misgender other, like, students, and that students will pick up on that really quickly. And it's just like, they're just microaggressions. Like, every time someone uses she, her pronouns with me, I'm just like, my day is ruined. Thank you. Well, not ruined, but, like, it's hard for me to concentrate, and I make a face. Like, I make a, like, you can see the life drain from my eyes when anyone calls me she, her. I don't think I'm very much different from a cisgender guy because we're all guys. However, as soon as people misgender me, I'm somehow different, and it's just like a reminder that I was like, oh yeah, you're trans. Have fun thinking about that for the rest of the day.
Well, I mean, the thing about that is that people don't realize it makes a lot of trans people disassociate from their bodies. It's like a natural mental response, and that's because it has to do with PTSD and, like, trauma in general, like repetitive trauma towards your mind. Because then we're not just thinking like, oh, that person misgendering, it just misgendered me. We're thinking like, that's gonna cause other people to misgender me, then what's that person gonna think? What if that goes into the wrong hands? What if that person misgenders someone that, like, tells another person who wants to assault me? So it's not just about that.
And you gotta consider the fact too, it's like very different when it's an accident. Because an accident, yeah, it's still gonna cause a little bit of dysphoria, but, like, if someone's doing it on purpose, they're purposely putting your mind in going down that path and being like, I want this person to mentally suffer. And that's just mean and horrible and other words that YouTube would probably unmonetize me for.
Happens to me every time I upload.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, that's the thing too, because I wanted to talk about that. Like, if LGBTQ people didn't exist, like, they wouldn't have to argue against it or make laws against it. Like, literally making a law against that, like the bathroom bill, acknowledges that trans people exist. Like, whether you want them to or not, and you're trying to invalidate them, you're validating them by saying that they don't exist. By trying to, like, cover them up, like...
The bathroom bill makes me really angry for a couple reasons. Because the issue with the bathroom bill, like the first issue, because there are a lot of them, is that, you know, it says there are only 2 genders for 2 bathrooms, and you have like non-binary, intersex, gender neutral people who are like, no. But at the same time, you're also... I think that all bathrooms should be gender neutral because it also tells women that you need to not be in that environment with men. So it kind of tells people who are signed female at birth that you should be afraid of men, which I think all bathrooms should be gender neutral in that sense. And we're also, the reason that like trans people can't go in that bathroom is so rapists don't also do it. But if a rapist is gonna rape somebody, I don't think a bathroom is gonna be where they stop. They're literally criminals. And it's literally just, if rape is the problem, let's stop. Let's work on that. Let's stop sexual assault. Let's stop sexism. Let's start like moving towards positive things like that rather than just accommodating rapists. That's just ridiculous when there's an actual minority.
No, the bathroom bill is like literally an excuse for just to be openly transphobic, because oftentimes trans people are the ones who get raped, and that's like, it's statistically proven.
Yeah, it's just the reasons behind it are wrong. On top of the fact it doesn't even make sense. Which is it's just showing that this year we have the highest, like, there's more pressure against the trans community to stop existing than there has been in a couple years. Because I think that we've brought a lot of light to ourselves, like, as a community and stood up for ourselves, and then we literally have our government pushing back, and that's scary, and it's very new. Because A, we haven't gotten, like, that much recognition to be existing, and B, people don't want us to literally exist because people actually murder people, and that's what this day is about. Which is just, we need to fix this, and I don't want to have 2018 be a new highest record and just continue with that trend.
Yeah, which like brings me to the point, I always like to end my videos like this that are about something dark with something that we could do to change it, or how you could impact your community and how to stay safe, because like, while all this stuff sounds really dismal, it can be really discouraging to someone who's trans or someone who hasn't come out yet, or who's like unable to come out, because a lot of people are. Like, I think there's way more trans people than anyone knows because they just are unable to come out. And I think like the main things that I always think about, like, if you have a trans friend, or be that the friend that you would like to be if you were struggling with something that was about your identity and something that you can't control. So like, if someone comes out, support them. Like, don't question them, don't like ask about their genitalia or something, just be like, wow, I'm happy for you for coming out and being true to yourself. Or you can call your representatives and all that stuff, but if you have like social anxiety, you can still do your part by telling someone and correcting them if they either misgender a trans person, or they're purposefully spreading misinformation, or if they're doing it on accident, because oftentimes those are the people who are willing to learn. And if everyone does their part and they just say something, like, even if you just go and tell one person like, hey, that's not accurate, or that's kind of transphobic, you're making a difference. And even if they don't agree, they're going to be thinking about it later, and it might change their mind.
Yeah, there's a lot of ignorance in the world, and you can, like, stop it. Like, even if it's, like, a little bit difficult to be like, hey, you're actually very wrong. It's something which benefits people, and there's closeted people everywhere. A lot of people say, there's no trans people in my school. What am I gonna do? There's no trans people you know about. A lot of trans people are very much in the closet or partially in the closet, and you're not gonna know about them. But when you actually like make a difference and you talk about being an activist or like activism for trans people, then trans people are gonna pick up on it, and they're gonna know that there's someone safe to go to if they need that. And just being there for people is what we need. I mean, we have so many disagreements about these things, but the bottom line is there are people who are murdered because of their very existence. And you can argue that like our existence is wrong or whatever you want to argue, because you're probably a jerk if you're arguing that. But regardless, it's just a fact, and there are statistics about it, and that they made a day to point this out because no one's listening. And if there's any day that you could do it, today's kind of that day. So it's just one day out of the year. Be a nice guy, like one day. Please.
If you're someone who feels unsafe, just know there's people like Asher and I who are out there. There's communities that we're trying to build where there's other people who will accept you, and there are people. I really hope that they don't stay as silent, because that is a huge part of it. Like, we need cis people, especially like cis white people, to stand up for people who aren't cis and white and heterosexual.
If you have privilege, you can do a lot. Like, it's just kind of a fact. It's weird because as soon as it gets to queer rights or race rights and stuff, people get so uncomfortable about standing up to it. But then it's like, I support animal rights, I support other rights, I support so many things that like don't even apply to me. And that's the same thing with being trans. Like, I can support African Americans' rights and their lives, but I'm not African American, and I'm still standing up with them because we need groups that stand with minorities, because minorities aren't going to be listened to on their own. And especially when our government is so white cisgender men, like that's all it is, straight cisgender men. We need voices.
A lot of people are just afraid that they're going to receive backlash, and the important part to remember, like, if you needed a sign, this is your sign.
One day, you can do it.
Yeah, to like come and talk about it anyways. Like, stand up to what you're afraid of and support another person, because maybe there will be backlash, but they're not going to be from the people who are worth something. And people often ignore the part where the community will come. Like, these people who are suffering are going to want to thank you, and they're going to be appreciative of you. And if they say something like, oh, you're still not using my pronouns right or something, that's because like we face this on a daily basis, and we're trying to correct you before it goes any more wrong.
Yeah, I think that like if you misgender someone, our worry is like, because the more someone misgenders you, the more their brain is gonna go to that. It's like the more your brain does that, the more naturally it feels. It becomes habitual. So if you start correcting them every time, they're gonna be more likely to be like, he, him, she, her, they, them, whatever your pronouns are, to like, it's gonna stick in their brain. It isn't an insult. You just made a mistake, and we're letting you know. Like, it's like if you had food on your teeth. I'd want to know. I'd want someone to be like, hey, get that out of your teeth real quick so you don't embarrass yourself. I don't know, that's how I view it. I don't think it should be taken as an insult.
It makes sense. I think it's just like a sensitive thing, and like if trans people seem defensive, it's because they have to be to survive, which is the point of this video.
Yeah, it's literally about survival.
So thank you for watching. Be sure to be kind to your fellow trans individuals, because we're all on the same earth together. If you want to check out Asher's channel, he's really awesome. He has a bunch of amazing videos. Go click on his bubble right here. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe and let us know what you think in the comments. Let us know anything you've experienced, and feel free to be open with us, because we like being open with you. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.